Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm super excited for today because we've got Liran with us. And Liran, I've seen him speak at multiple events and he's awesome. But, I'm really excited, not just for our amazing guest, but also because security, it's not so important. I don't think so, because no one's going to want to hack my system. I pay all that money for that open source software that, the ORM's going to remove everything it needs. So it's fine. But that's obviously completely wrong. And we should care. And Liran's going to explain why. But before we do, Liran, please give yourself an intro.
I see what you did already. You're trolling me from this get-go. I like that. That's my liking of banter between friends.
And I'm going to share your link in the chat while you give yourself an intro.
All right, cool. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here on Eddie's stream. I am a developer advocate at Snyk. So we're going to talk a lot about developer security, maintainer security. We're going to chat through a bunch of resources that are hopefully helpful to you gaining kind of like a little bit more information and insights, just like understanding what to secure around your kind of like developer hygiene around security, some resources and like maybe dependency vulnerabilities. Maybe we'll scan Eddie's project and figure out if there's like any security vulnerabilities there. Yeah. Oh my God. We don't know. We'll see.
Update.
Update now. But yeah, like code security, anything else. So like any other questions you have related to some of that in the domain, I'll recommend you post them onto Eddie's chat anywhere you are, and we'll get them addressed and like have a nice interactive session here as well. So yep, there we go.
Sounds good. Well, we've got a few people watching already. I can see from the stats. Do say hi in the chat. Let us know if you've contributed to open source. If you're a maintainer of any open source projects, do let us know. And we look forward to geeking out with you today. So, Liran, where should we start? So, like I said, all my projects are super secure because I use all that money for frameworks and ORMs. But
yes.
Clearly, that's not the case. But take us through it. We'll let you take the lead. And I'm super excited. Let me know when you want me to bring your screen up as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, maybe we share the screen and go through kind of like we're gonna, so the context is we are going to like discuss a specific project, one of Eddie's. So we're gonna go through this, talk, what it is, what's the framework, what's the stack, what are we actually building here, what are we looking at, and how from like a maintainer point of view at like this open source project that's managed like that, but it doesn't really have to be open source. It could be like your work project. How would you kind of like tackle specific areas, specific domains related to security from all the stuff that we kind of like mentioned in the intro? So maybe you can like start and tell us what this is, Eddie.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much for asking. So this is the new Eddie Hub project. Well, I say new, it's a couple of months old now. And the idea is that we really wanted to help people make their open source projects friendly. So if you click on all projects, because I know this is your screen, and then just pick anyone, maybe pick the third one down, health check, which is this actual project. So like we're using this project to check this project, and you can see we check like, is there a URL, like are there a good number of topics? But we have got one error, and these are suggestions that I've come up with. I have got more to add. We do want to add the open source scorecard for security reasons, which Sam also briefly mentioned on a live stream previously, and we're using a GitHub action to run that. But I haven't really looked at it, to be honest, and I need to look at it properly and understand it. And then I want to add those results to here. So for people who are running that GitHub action, then I want it to appear on their report as well. So that's the idea. I mean, have you got a license? Have you got a pull request template? And it even goes as far as like, checks, are you using the main branch? Have you got maybe too many branches open? So it's focused more on the friendly side rather than the security side, but we want to add that next, the security aspect to it. So that's something we'll probably be doing from next week, because at the moment we're working on some scheduler stuff so it can run these reports like once a week, just to make sure that you're not going backwards rather than forwards, right? I've got one warning and one error, which is needs improving, but I want to make sure next week I haven't suddenly got 2 errors or 3 errors. Like I want to be going forwards, not backwards.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, cool. So that's basically the idea of the project in a nutshell.
All right, so there are several aspects that we could go and like deep dive into here. I will say, if I kind of like where the the bug bounty hacker kind of like hat here.
Yep.
Is sort of like my Yoda hat. It's just like a bit more offensive and reddish. So you could like, I could figure out like, hey, I can sign in. Let's see what I can do. Let's try to like play around with this app, with this code, like unrelated to the fact if it's, open source or not. Let's say we don't really know what's going on. So I'll see like, what sort of like user input can I control and figure out if I can actually like find a security vulnerability. So that's like one of like that's like a very deep dive, hardcore security stuff around this application. If you're looking at it from like the owner of this, of like, if I am I'm building this. There are other aspects which we can talk about, which I like, how this is kind of like lined up. So, this description by Eddie is like, hey, this gives you an idea of like how well positioned, like, like structured this repository is. So it has like a description, it has a URL. So if I go to, I've got my code spaces here, but if I go to the repository itself, which I guess
Yeah.
this button does. Yeah, so I guess this is like, maybe it has a URL, a description.
Could you zoom in a bit? It's quite small. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you.
100%. So yeah, there's like a bunch of those attributes that we want to make sure that everything is kind of like set correctly. So as Eddie said, there's like kind of generic and not yet much about the security aspect, but let's see if do we have like maintainers here, which is I was interested in like saying description, topic.
No.
README, okay, license. There should be a security markdown one as well that we should probably add.
Yes. Does someone want to raise an issue for that? Because that is an important one. Absolutely. I will put a note in the chat.
Yeah, 100%. So here's the thing, right? Like we added a release, a README. The repository itself has, I think I looked at that before, and I know that it does have a security markdown file. So let's start with that and like just set the scene here.
Mm-hmm.
So the security markdown is a way to kind of like, I would say, disclose kind of like what is your security posture for this. So if you do want to get security bugs like vulnerabilities reported to you for this project, so what is your policy, for example? Like, do you want to get them or do you not? Do you want them to like be reported to like a CNA, a CVE numbering authority, like a security company like Snyk or others who may be able to like triage the reports, see if it's okay, contact the maintainer, and then issue a security advisory thing. So you could say that, or you could say like do it like Eddie did here, which is like, yeah, send them to me and just send them over here. You could also say there's like a 30 days or a 90 days disclosure timeline. So please do not disclose the vulnerability openly until that time frame. So like it gives the maintainer time to triage those vulnerabilities without putting a lot of pressure on them. And it could do a bunch of other things. So like I actually want to explore and like deep dive into this because we're gonna zoom into a lot of things and then zoom out and like play that game throughout, because there's like just a bigger domain here in terms of security. So if I go to say Node, let's go to Node. And the Node.js project also has a security markdown that's obviously going to be a bit more in depth. So it shows you, first off, if you want to report the bug to the project, there is a bug bounty program. So that's managed by HackerOne. This is for the Node core project itself. So you could say, hey, I found like, a prototype pollution vulnerability in Node, and like you want to go and discuss and, disclose it here as a security researcher. Sometimes as a user, as a developer, you might, find those like, denial of service or the application crashes in some way Node because of like, a memory leak or some buffer overflow or something like that. So you want to disclose it to the company, to the team here of Node without, of course, putting users at risk. That's the whole responsible disclosure policy thing. And you have like all the policy of like how to do that. But then again, if you go a bit down and you could see there's, further in depth of like the security policy, but there's something that's called a threat model. So the Node.js team have kind of like got together and said, hey, you know what? Node is built in a very specific way. And also the underlying engine, like the V8 or JavaScript language and all of those kind of things, they kind of like, set the stage for any kind of like JavaScript application running on the server in terms of like what's the get go situation, like the state of the app itself. So for example, what I said before about product isolation, those are vulnerabilities that Node actually does not take in consideration as something that's a valid security issue, because a prototype pollution by its nature is part of the JavaScript language, right? Like the prototype chain and that kind of way of like, building applications in JavaScript. If you wanted to, go, all that hardcore, way of writing your, your classes or whatever. But that's kind of like a feature of the language. So the Node project says, if you allow code to, user land code to kind of like land on the app itself in some way, like maybe you serialize it, maybe you get it from user input and you, do something with it, then yeah, like it's not really going to be a Node vulnerability, because, you've already kind of like the trust barrier is that the user code itself. So
Makes
there's
sense.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of those, examples of what they say is like non-vulnerabilities. So of course, if you find something in in third-party modules, you're not gonna disclose that to Node itself. And there's like a bunch of others. We're not gonna go through some of them, but hopefully, like that kind of give you an idea of like technically kind of like deep idea of like what is a vulnerability, maybe what is not. But this is kind of like very deep. So going back to where's the Going back to this, we could, if you wanted to later, you could kind of like say what's the scope, what's the policy disclosure guideline.
Right, makes
You could
sense.
do all of that.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I never even thought about that. I didn't think about the scope, but the scope is so important, and we think about that with features. Why not with security? Because you're right. Yeah, that's really important. Okay, so mental note, Eddie. That's super, super important. It's the first time I think I've actually heard of the scope part, which I'm really surprised about. So much to learn. So thank you so much. That's straight away like one massive gem already that, in the grand scheme of things might seem small, but it's actually really important for the projects to define this. Otherwise, it just creates too much noise and confusion. So that is awesome. So scope, I want to make a note in the chat.
Yeah.
Scope.
I mean, very kind of like, good surprise to just, see that you have security MD, so like a security disclosure at all. I think that's already like a good start. And I would say the next best thing that you could do is if you go to, so I obviously can't see the settings here, but I can go as like a viewer of this. If I go to the security tab, sorry, then you could see that I actually have the ability to report a vulnerability. So you do want as a maintainer to enable that, which I imagine that you did, Eddie, which is a good thing, because otherwise the security researchers, those who kind of like want to find, to disclose the bug to you, might go to the issues, right, and report something publicly, which you don't want to do, or like go and try to find your, personal email or something that you use to like communicate with you.
So that's interesting. Yeah, we did this with Sam, actually. We enabled this with Sam, and I completely forgot to change the file. So yes, if you hit report, what happens? Does it look like an issue kind of style thing, but it's private? Right. Okay.
It will end up being private, but for me, it allows me to just, choose like all, or like fill in all the actual like, security details here that's related to the finding itself. And then, yeah, only you could see it, or more healthy, I think, the actual like maintainers, not just yourself. So the burden is not just you, it's the whole maintainer team of a project.
Okay, so I should probably reword that markdown file to say, please report it using the security tab.
Exactly. I just make it a link to this one, and then that's a good start.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Another issue. Can someone raise an issue for that as well? Lots of green squares today.
Getting started here.
Update.
Now, as we explore, so this is like a very, I went like very zoom in, double clicked on the whole like code security aspects of the product or the project here of health check, which we'll actually revisit again because there's some other things that are interested here. But I kind of like want to take another approach to this, which is I want to zoom out and talk about. I kind of like want to relate that. I've got a few tabs here with folders open, kind of like to the topic, so you know what to expect. Agenda based on browser tabs. That's I'm gonna try and make that a thing. But yeah, as we kind of like went through, some of these things, and I asked, Eddie just a sec ago, right? Like, do you have like a maintainer account here? And that's already kind of like tells you to start thinking, in the area of, of supply chain security even. So, hey, this is like maybe a good healthy sign that you have, 16 contributors.
Right.
I don't know if does GitHub actually show like maintainer count?
I don't think so.
Not really, right?
I don't think it does, but I could be wrong.
So npm does it though. So if you go to
Right.
like an npm project,
Okay.
so yes, you could just search for
But
something.
I might be able to get that information because I do have the user's token, and if they have write permission to the repo, then I get more statistics and graph on the report, like the historic stats. So I might be able to get the maintainers list and display a number, like not the details, but a number. So that's something for me to look into.
Right, and I mean it kind of it changes between the maintainer itself and like it depends if you look at it from the artifact point of view, which is like the published npm package, which isn't a good example because this isn't like a project for publishing an artifact like that. But it's something to consider. So what I'm kind of like trying to allude to is you could say there's like 16 contributors here who are actively working on the project, and now there's a question of, is this a good sign or a bad sign? Because it sounds like a good sign to begin with, right? Now, let me kind of like flip that and show you like maybe why that's the bad sign. So let's say I open like a new tab here with the Express project, which by the way, just celebrated the 5 major release version after like 10 years. So
Wow.
we're going to update this soon, I guess. But amazing. And shout out to that team doing that. So that's Wes and Ulysses and so many other people involved. But kind of like taking a step back from Express as a as their new release published a day ago. You could see the amount of collaborators here. Now, potentially, these are all the user accounts that have access to publish an npm package.
Okay.
Let's see how that changes with something else. I'm gonna try it out with React. I have no idea if that's gonna be different. Okay, so I think prior versions had a bit more of them, and we can go and check, others, just stuff that's kind of like, you might be aware of. So why I'm kind of like alluding to this, because the risk of someone accessing or having access to publish new packages is obviously super big, right? Like if I'm able to compromise the maintainer of one of those user accounts, I'm able to just influence like 30 million downloads a week of consumer accounts.
Wow.
So, right. So, and now that you kind of try to think about it, so the more people you have over here with access to publish a package is not always a good thing. Imagine you had like 50 people, which I've seen some projects, very popular one as well, with like 20 or 30 people like having access to publish to npm packages, which means they have like a token to publish a new package. And if that gets leaked or they get compromised through some just an account takeover, they get phished. Their account isn't really secure. They're just using like a password with no 2FA, a bunch of things that will just end up really badly for the project. So this is why going back over here and then over here, you kind of like might start thinking, okay, maintainer accounts, 16 for health check, that's good. But then potentially there's like a flip side to that too. So
I've just made some notes, by the way. You've given me lots of ideas for those checks. So thank you so much. I am still here. I was just making notes.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm going to leave off that for a sec, but then go and now connect again the whole scoring here. And go to like discuss what's scorecard, because you did mention that.
Yes. So yeah, I look forward to hearing more about this. And we have got a scorecard. I think we've got a badge in the README for ours, so you can see the results. But I need to bring that data into the report, and there is a JSON endpoint to do that. And while you're doing that, I just want to say, Viknesh, if you have an error, could you just share with me the path of your repo? So forget github.com because YouTube will remove the URL. If you could just share like in this case for the health check, it's Eddie Hub community / health check. So if you could share that, then I can just have a look into that later on. And always nice to listen to Liran. I agree, absolutely. So Arandel, I hope I pronounced that okay.
Thank you, Arandel.
Sorry, go ahead, Liran.
Well, good. Where were we? OpenSSF, yes. So maybe what that is, because potentially a lot of like new people are not really aware of that. So I'll kind of like use this as a get-go. It's a project by Scorecard, project by OpenSSF, which is the Open Source Security Foundation. The idea with Scorecard is kind of like what Eddie built here. It's like, hey, there's a scorecard for some project here, right? Like this, which gets whatever score here, 2 errors, 1 warning because of it. It needs some updates, like get the project better, in a better, healthier state. And this does the same, but only for security. That's the idea, right? So it assesses open source projects for security risk through a series of automated checks. Looks like there's like a bit of a bug there. Go ahead and open an issue for that one as well. More ideas here. But yeah, that's kind of like the thing that we want to see. So kind of to show you like how important that is. I've got like my other sliding into like another tab. America's cyber defense agency, often known as like CISA, it's a cybersecurity infrastructure. So this is like an actual government thing for the US. And they've like cited this too as OpenSSF scorecard in terms that this is something you kind of probably want to get added to your project in terms of like just gaining visibility on how that project is managed, from like the security processes, the security hygiene, which we'll talk about in a second, and talk through like what's happening here. So how do you get started with this? So first off, there is an open source repo, obviously, which has a website, which we'll see again in a sec. And you kind of like add the scorecard, which is, you can imagine how this was built. There's like obviously some score based on each of those checks, which is, each check is kind of like either like an actual check, which you could just ping the API endpoint of GitHub and check if there's like a URL set for the project settings, like in the metadata, or some of it might be heuristics. So for example, if I wanted to let's look at this and give you another idea here. Let's say Eddie wanted to add another health status score here to the project that says, is this project well tested? Like, does it have tests, right? So that's kind of like hard to do. Like, there's like no API endpoint you could ping on GitHub to find this, but you could run some heuristics. So like you could like, if the project added here is like an NPM project, you could go and check, hey, is there like a package JSON script with npm run test that's like actually a valid command to run, which is, it's not a false positive. I don't know. It sometimes may be true. Sometimes, there could be a command, but like no tests.
Yes.
Right.
Echo not found, or I've seen people put like an echo in the command, not yet, or something.
Exactly. That's why I said, so this is like heuristics. You could, I don't know, you could figure it out. You could check if there's like, a connected, a code cov kind of like, integration, and maybe that's like that's a signal. So a lot of the times for the OpenSSF scorecard, they kind of do these heuristics for some of it, not for everything, but for some, they kind of like try to do that. And if I go to the website, that kind of like takes you through how to use it. It's pretty, I would say, kind of like simple to just follow whatever you kind of like want to. So they've built a really cool website. You could see an example for the scores, which we'll dive into in a sec. But you could see some examples, right? Like, is there a SAST thing, which we'll go into? Is there a security policy, which was there as well? Are there CI tests, by the way, was there also in a sec? Vulnerabilities, obviously. So there's a bunch of ways to use it. You could install the GitHub action, use the CLI. There's a bunch of ways to kind of like do this if you wanted to. I'm going to try, and so I'll leave you off to do that as like, part of your own contribution to the project here. But what they also have is
we do have one running with a GitHub action for our repo if you do want to look at like actual results.
I actually do. So let's go to the repo and check.
In the README, there is a badge at the top. Last one, I think 5.6 is what we've got.
Yeah, that's the one. So, oh yeah, and I wanted to show you this because this is an open one. So you could actually go here to remove like it is GitHub format thing.
I
And then
see.
if you go here, you could just add whatever other project you want. I
Wow,
think it
that's
doesn't
cool.
work for forks, but yeah, that's really cool,
Okay,
right?
that is very cool.
Put whatever you want, check the scorecard.
Or don't, because you're
Or
scared of the
the,
results. That's what some people do. It's obviously safe because I haven't checked it, so there can't be any errors.
100%.
5.6 is pretty bad though, right?
I don't know. It depends. It depends.
Could you
I'll
sorry,
check.
could you zoom in a bit again? It's very, very small. Thank
Yeah.
you. But
So, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say
Run me
branch
through some of your
protection.
thoughts.
Yes, I think I purposely disabled that because the GitHub action needs to write after it changes the change
Oh, the
log
update, the
and
README.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it goes via a pull request now. So actually, I think that's all right. We might better re-enable that now. Someone in the community fixed that. Someone way smarter than me. So
Sweet.
yeah, that might be right now. Okay, it's good to review these things because I checked it a few weeks ago, but things have changed in a few weeks and they could have got worse, but hopefully they've got better. And I think they will get better once I re-enable that. So that's a good thing. Let me make a note of that as well.
Yep. And we'll go through some of them, but like I want to tell you a real security incident related to some of this, which is like super important. And I only remember that because a friend of mine shared that on like a private chat with me today, related to like their workplace. That's like right on brand with what we're talking about here. So the public story is a few months ago, there's been this case, the security incident with a package called LedgerKit Connect. I might be confusing some of the naming there. It's been a while, but it's kind of like this library, this SDK that was used over. You would kind of like use it sometimes over CDN to kind of like import that library thing, JavaScript, obviously, and yeah, and what happened is it got compromised and added, newer versions of that had malicious code in them. And like this is like something that gets downloaded like a lot. And so you kind of like wonder like, well, how did it get compromised? This is like, there's like a whole company around it, etc. It's not some small open source project. And the reason they kind of like traced it back into what really happened there is, the attackers were targeting an employee who worked at that company before. So you're now an ex-employee.
Okay.
They phished them to be able to then extract an NPM registry token that they had lying around with access to that ledger connected, library thing, which, as you remember, is kind of like what we
Wow.
said here. By the way, Express is amazing. This is not about Express, just using it. Actually, you want to shout out to like the new release here, but right, look at the amount of people you have here. That's kind of like what you kind of want to make sure that is under control. Now, why is this related? Because if I go back to this scorecard thing, part of like an offboarding process of employees with security hygiene would say this connector access to different things. One of them is obviously things like NPM registry tokens, which employees might have, developers might have lying around in their systems or whatever, and they haven't really expired them, and that didn't go through the process here. But this is kind of related because, for example, if there was a way to if branch protection is not enabled, if code review is not enabled, which, as you could see, determine if the project requires human code review before pull requests. And there's also, I don't know if they counted that, but there's also, let me see if it's under that one. So many checks. I think it's this one where they kind of like require you. Oh yeah, it's this. Is it this one? I don't know. But they kind of like require you to like, for one of those checks, I think it is this, that two people or more than two have to approve a pull request for it to get merged. So imagine, they would have access to the GitHub repository here. Well, they couldn't just force push a production like a main or master branch change here, because this would be enabled, and this setting in GitHub would like disallow anyone, regardless of who they are, for the project to just push anything there, not just forceful, just generally like had a commit and push it to the master branch or main branch without that going through a pull request. And then you could go and like safeguard, add like another guardrail and like safeguard the pull request itself, and says, okay, because you could just say, right, like, okay, I'll open a pull request, approve it myself, and then merge it. But no, this has to go to like a 2% or more process, which is kind of like, a more obviously healthy process where you, sometimes you kind of like want to move fast, but also it would expose you to different things like that kind of like incident that we talked about. So this is where everything kind of comes together, right? Like all of those checks that they have, maintain token permissions. We'll talk about the vulnerabilities in a sec, but all of those things that they have are specifically in like their open source security nature to figure out if there's like risk involved in the project in the way it is determined or configured based on like the heuristics of open source code.
That's so interesting, because interestingly enough, I just replied to Vignesh in the chat. I actually was a bit worried that some tokens might have got leaked. They didn't, but just to avoid it, I reset all the OAuth tokens, and so I just saw Vignesh saying get an application error when they try and use the health check, and it's because I've expired all the tokens, so you need to log out and log in again. But I only did that because I thought I shared a screen when I shouldn't have done, but I didn't in the end, like I said. But we should probably do that more regularly, so therefore, because someone else could have done something, like you said, it's not just me, like other people have access to things and so forth. So that's probably something that should be happening, I don't know, weekly or monthly, not having that indefinite, like never expire. Someone can get a laptop
Right.
3 years later, and they've got this access to an organizer at GitHub org or something that they shouldn't have to. So yeah, it's so important. I didn't realize that until like yesterday.
Yeah, no, that is important, by the way. And you're just reminding me that there's also, I don't know if that gets included here. I think that might be it. Yeah, that might be it. But there's been recent security disclosures or like incidents with specifically related to the way GitHub Action workflows run and configured. So there's like a bunch of like different patterns in however you can like configure the workflow, the CI YAML files and stuff like that, that they could be abused for someone to take over the repository and push commit to it without having access. Just like there's like this thing called like a pawn request, which is kind of like a pull request, naming banter thing, but it's based on that. So just to explain to you kind of like where that goes is, imagine that part of the CI for a project, which is, if we go here, I don't want to put you on the spot for some of them.
No, I don't mind. That's fine. Go ahead.
So those workflows, and I don't know which one as well, but imagine that that part of like the pull request here, the workflow here would be to do something like, use the pull request that was, imagine that you have this workflow, right? Described as follows. Someone opens a pull request, you want to take the title, and maybe you want to kind of like lint it to like make sure that it has like specific coding, like wording conventions, like you have like conventional commit stuff.
Yes.
And so what if you did that over here and you like did, to pull the information, you would just do extract it, via the pull request here and did something there. Now, the problem with doing that in an insecure way is that I am controlling that input of the title. So if you're running that in the workflow and you're doing some exec or whatever, command with it, you're basically allowing me to then inject in some way, a specific wording that in the pull request would get added here as part of your workflow. Potentially, maybe you're using in that workflow like some secrets or environment variables here that I could actually access as well, but I don't have to. Maybe I even have just access to just push whatever random commits out of this. So all of those different ways of like I think someone kind of like popped in my chat here quickly, said about hardening the CI/CD pipeline is like super important. And there's a bunch of way to just get it wrong. Unfortunately, specifically, I mean, not specifically, but I've been reading a lot of cases related to GitHub workflow. So please, try to follow right conventions. I haven't went through, where is this? Through this documentation from OpenSSF Scorecard, but you probably want to do that, especially if there's a like really highly privileged, high impact open source projects.
Yeah, what most people do is they go, right, I can't get this token to work. I'm in a hurry. Let me just give it all the permissions and I'll reduce it later. And later just never comes because it's working. Why check
Yeah.
it if it's working? Rather than incrementally adding stuff to see when it kind of works, or reading the docs, which no one ever does. They give it the maximum. So yes, that's so important. I've actually started using on the health check using Trunk, which adds all these linters. And there's a linter that actually checks, just Trunk.io, and a linter that actually checks my GitHub Actions, and it keeps saying this, you need this, and you need this, and this is insecure. I'm like, oh, I didn't know about this. I just copied and pasted it from somewhere else, from someone else's repo. I like that GitHub Action, copy and paste. But like you said, things change, and it's so important. So yes, do check these things out and use the scorecard, use like Trunk.io, and use Snyk. I mean, Snyk has loads of tools as well. I'm sure you can mention those as well. And we just had Francesco join at the right time as well. Hi, Francesco.
Oh, hey, Francesco. Nice.
How was your live stream, Francesco? I think Francesco had one before mine, and he might have just finished and come straight here. Snyk is cool. Yes, I know how to say it now as well because it took me years to learn how to say it.
Yeah, we'll say it in a few, but definitely a few more things to go here through.
Okay, I'll leave it back to you.
Yes. So let's see what else we can cover. A lot of stuff. So scorecard we talked through. I won't bore you with more of that. Let's quickly go through some of those. So OpenSSF. So OpenSSF has a bunch more really handy, kind of guidelines that you kind of want to go through. These are some excerpts from like one of their reports. So like things, by the end of 2023, 70% of maintainers and core contributors feel that OSS will be secure. Well, we will hope so. Number one approach to evaluating the security of OSS packages, open source software, is SCA and SaaS tools, which we'll get to in a sec. And there's like a bunch more. I won't go through all of them, but it shows you kind of like what's the state of things. They also have guidelines for developing and distributing secure software, which is, very, this is like a lot of sightings, but if you scroll a bit down, there's more specific guidance to specific ecosystems. COBOL, not yet, but maybe we'll see. So OWASP related resources, I think some of these could use a bit of an update because I'm aware of the resources mentioned here, and I think I might ping to update some of those. But specifically wanted to show you because it doesn't really matter if you're like on this stream and what you do is like PHP or Python. There's probably going to be some security best practices for that, and kind of like here's like a one-stop shop for doing secure coding with Python. So what you should be aware of is example of different vulnerabilities that could happen, and how to maybe write secure code to like avoid some of these issues. So definitely, like I would say, set some time, explore some of these resources, like super handy. This is the one around source code management. So again, source code and platform configuration. So this relates all the way back to what we just said and kind of like concludes that, which is, I'll zoom in a bit more here for you. But like different tooling, there's All-Star, there's the Gitify, there's Scorecard, which we showed you. So if you wanted to like try something else, yeah.
There's quite a lot. I'm just learning more and more about this all the time. The more I kind of discuss it with people, the more I find out there's just other tools, other things we need to know of, and they're there to help. Like they're not there to cause a problem. Like they're there to help us, and I think it's just so important to be aware of these.
And if using and like exploring one of them sounds like I think we just showed that it's easy to get like a scorecard thing. But if you kind of like didn't want to get bothered with that, there's like the recommendation part kind of gives you an idea of like what to be aware of. So workflows should not be allowed to approve pull requests. Makes sense. If you're like an enterprise level thing, make sure that the two-factor authentication should be enforced for the enterprise and stuff like that. Actually, really true for open source maintainers as well. So take that into account. Repository issues, right? These are some of those checks are basically embedded into the scorecard, right? So that's kind of what we talked about. And if it's easier for you to just go through those instead of the scorecards, I mean, be my guess, like any progress you do on like securing your project is a good progress here. So I'll leave you off with all of those as well to go through, and we can probably I'll give you all that list afterwards. You can add it somewhere already in the stream if you wanted to.
Yeah, feel free to put it in the private chat, and I can reshare it in the stream chat as well, just on the side.
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna go and kind of like switch gears into something a bit different.
Okay, let's go. This is getting serious now. I'm sweating a bit because, security. I said you don't have to worry about it, but at the beginning, but that was obviously a joke. And every time we look into it, I'm like making notes. I'm like, must look into this, must do this, and I think we can get a lot by not doing a lot of effort, like just a little bit of effort. I think we can get a lot in return and improve it a lot. I'm not saying it's easy. Yes, you can go down a rabbit hole when it gets really hard, really quick, and that's the stuff that you do. But I think just a little bit of effort, we can get like a bigger impact kind of straight away. That's what we need to, I think a lot of developers need to spend kind of 10-20% of their time just improving these things, and then obviously if they get more time, great, or leave it to the experts like yourself.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think any progress really is good progress if you make it, and further yet, the ROI on like just using some tools, some practices to try and get you ahead of the curve pretty fast is important.
Exactly. Oh, you just gave me an idea. I'm so sorry to interrupt. When you showed the open source scorecard, I was thinking in my mind, once they add it to the health check, to our health check, we go and check if they've got any data. But what we can do is there's that form. So we could actually fill it in and actually get results for them. So even if they haven't set it up, we could do it already. So I need to make a note. You've given me an idea. The ideas are flying. This is brilliant. Okay, I love these discussions. Sorry, you carry on. Back to you, Liran. Let me make a note of this so I don't forget.
All right, all good. It's like a classic devil, just context switching, and the brain is playing all the time.
Exactly, especially when with awesome people like yourself, like giving me lots of ideas. So I'm just going to make a one-line note so I don't forget.
That's good. All right, so I think I'll finish with some of like the curated maintainer security resources at the end, and kind of like we'll jump to some more developer security resources that I think as a maintainer of a product you kind of like want to be aware of. So I'll start off with showing you this thing, which is called deps.dev, which is like zoom in again, which is in like a searching for packages in different registries. So I don't know what to call it, but like a sinkhole of packages. That's what it is. It just of course tracks them, nothing else. So like if we can search for one of mine. So I don't want to pick on any other project. Mine is Lockfile.
Yours is going to be perfect.
No, actually it's not, but we can talk through it. So you can search it across different ecosystems, like we said, which is pretty cool. And it gets you. I want to show you this because this is like a really cool tool for several reasons. First off, it gives you obviously it's like looking at NPM, but you get some other cool things here. So obviously, if there's like security advisories, you see them, licenses, you can see the licenses used across your different dependencies, which is pretty cool too. The amount of dependencies as well, which is some of those you can get also from NPM. And here is a scorecard that we talked about before, right? So score, 4.4 out of those. And like I said, some, by the way, doesn't really detect well because of the heuristics, because I do have like Snyk connected to this, but it doesn't detect that. And so on. So like we can ignore some of this stuff, but what I wanted to show you is some of the cool stuff that exists here is you could actually compare some versions. And this is kind of like what I would do sometimes if I kind of like investigate a security incident that's happening in like, someone says, hey, there's like a malicious, package or version published to some package. I could go in and choose different tags and
Okay.
just compare what the change was, right? So like for a release, that kind of makes sense, of course. If it's like, the publish date is changed, but maybe dependencies, you could see which dependencies were, added or removed. This one doesn't have any code changes, but obviously if it did, you could see them as well. So again, this kind of gives you a bit more power in terms of understanding, also changes between versions if you wanted to take that approach. At the end of the day, though, I think if you're trying to figure out, hey, should I use, let's go to like one of those dependencies just so I have something to kind of like pick on. So I added cosmic config, right? Like, I don't know what cosmic config, and maybe you've seen this stream and you're like, hey, I don't know, Liran uses cosmic config in one of his projects to manage power apply configuration. Should I use it? So if you go to search it on npm.js, you get some data. Out of this, you get also some data, potentially about popularity and stuff like that, which is fine, I guess. Let's say. Great, pretty popular.
Very popular. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, for what it is. So you may, I mean, most developers I know would stop at this point where they're like, okay, it's pretty popular and, not that old. I'll use it.
Yep. If it's got lots of stars and it's got lots of downloads, then jackpot, it's going to be secure, right? Because stars and downloads mean security.
Exactly. Stars and downloads. That's what we need. So we kind of like took the approach of like building this thing called the Snyk Advisor a couple of years back, which I find myself regularly use. So this is it. And it tracks some registries, not all of them. But what we try to do if we give it cosmic config, and you can see some other examples I tried before as well, it gives it a score because we know people are looking for a score. They don't have time to like go through all the nitty gritty details, like why it got that score. So sometimes I'm kind of like, feeling bad about, maybe scoring some packages that are actually pretty good, kind of like scoring them badly just because it, it changes in some way that we can like calculate that. So there's that. But also, I mean, when you go to like the actual project, you could see the package health score. And we do look at like 4, we try to like aggregate 4 different, obviously weighted differently too, but like 4 areas which we can like figure, this package is healthy. So we say, hey, security is one of them, of course. Popularity is also something that affects it. And then there's maintenance and community, which a lot of like the stuff that I talked about before too, like if you have too many maintainers or too less maintainers and stuff like that, that's kind of moves the needle, back and forth depending, for the score. So you could go through here and say, oh, great, like no known security vulnerabilities for this version, but also no specifically, in those other versions as well, which is great to see if you like on the 7 major branch and the 8 major branch and stuff like that. Another thing I like seeing here is we can like label them as like this is a key ecosystem project due to the downloads. But also if you wanted to know like where are all the downloads going to, which is also like I think an interesting observation. So there's like this popularity by version graph, and you could see that actually most of the downloads go to version 7, last release in 2022. That's an interesting insight.
Yeah, that's quite old, and it's still the most popular one. That's interesting. Yeah, definitely. And worrying probably a bit because there must be some security patches on the. Well, they've released a major since then, and 2 majors, right? 8 and
True.
9. Wow.
I mean, I'm just amazed that you're saying that this is old for like 2 years. This is only JavaScript developers can say that because like Java developers are like, oh, last updated like 2005. Sure, I'll use that. Pretty up to date, very current.
Yeah, JavaScript, if it's more than like 6 months, is out of date. But that might be an LTS, though. I don't know if 710 is an LTS, but I'm guessing not because it's a 0 at the end.
For this one, you mean, if it's an LTS?
I doubt it.
I mean, I'm kind of like...
Because there's been no additional ones, right? So...
Oh, if this is the latest, actually. I think probably is just because we can't see here unless we kind of like drilled into it.
Okay.
But I would guess just because of like the way packages are like managed with npm with like the carrots and the dash thing, kind of gets you all the latest through the merger one. So there's that. That's an interesting insight. And like if you see something that's like a bit old, you should start and wonder like what's the impact going to be there in terms of like all the older consumers. And I think that's kind of even more interesting for maintainers because they could figure out and say, hey, like, why are all my users on 7? Like, why are they not migrating to 8 and 9? Like, what's the reason for that? And it could be like a myriad of different reasons. By the way, not specifically bad as well. Like, maybe they're just like this is deployed like some old legacy project that do not get updates, or maybe you just switch from like, CJS to like ESM only on 8, and they can't really easily upgrade. Like, that's a very justifiable reason to just stay on an older version as well.
True. And Aridel says, old doesn't mean bad. They could be done. Yeah, I
100%.
was just thinking of like patch fixes, but maybe it's pretty bulletproof and it's okay. But I was thinking more, I suppose, its dependencies might need updating. So it might just be the package lock file that gets updated. I'm not saying like necessarily code changes to the project, but having not moved in so many years, I don't know how many dependencies the project's got, but I don't know. Just with JavaScript world, right? We just expect everything to move so fast.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's true, by the way. All doesn't mean bad at all. But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff. I'll let you kind of viewers, audience, and yourself explore that afterwards in your free time. That's okay. I wanted to like cite this one, which was also pretty interesting because we have like so many projects that we're monitoring at Snyk for users. We have this insight that we exposed from like the aggregate data to the public one, which is pretty cool. So you could see that 5%, like the top 5% of project on Snyk that we monitor have this, which is Cosmic Config. We said, right? Like, yeah, Cosmic Config is like a top direct dependency. So it gives you, I think, to an extent, like a correlated approach into like how really this is popular versus something that's popular, but mostly sometimes downloaded as like a transitive dependency. So that's like another thing to consider. But yeah, there's a bunch here.
There is so much we need to be aware of, and it's great that these are aggregated and just simplified, so we can drill down if you want. But like you said, at face value, we can see which one is the most popular and so forth. And I think it is, really interesting.
Yep. So maybe I'll kind of go like the extra mile here and do this. So what I want to do is go back to the where is that? Go back to the actual health check project, which is this. I'll save that, and I'll go ahead and try and scan it with Snyk. So
okay, oh God, I'm nervous to open a window. It's getting hot in here.
Nah, it's gonna be okay.
Is that because you checked it already and you know it's not too bad?
Maybe. We'll see. We'll talk through it.
Fingers crossed. Okay.
All right. So the way I do it is I would connect. Zoom in a bit more again. I will connect to log in with Snyk. It's, by the way, super easy and free. So you could just connect it to your GitHub, Google, whatever you want. And you have the ability to monitor public projects. So if you wanted to like go to GitHub, it will just take you to like the normal integrations where it shows you the repositories of different organization accounts or like user accounts that you have for GitHub. But for me, I'll just do monitor GitHub public repos, which is kind of super easy for me to do. I just paste this thing, add repo. I think I did already add it. So let's see. I don't know if to this account, but we'll see in a sec. So yeah, I did do that a while, I think. So it's going to import it, and what it does is, so Snyk looks at the way that this kind of thing works is it looks at your different, I would say, call it like manifest files, like the way that it can figure out like what it can learn from your repository. So if you go to the repository itself, you could also learn this, right? Like you could say, well, first off, I find that you have like a package JSON and a package lock. So based on both of those, I know which dependencies you have, direct and dev dependencies. So like that separation is also important. And also like all of your dependency tree as well. So like this is part of the log file. So super easy to figure that out as well. So it will go and scan those. Doesn't need the code for that, but then it will see, because I noticed that you had that when I tested it at first, is a Docker file. So it will say, oh, okay, I found this manifest for Docker, so you're probably spinning up containers in this way, and it will go and figure out if there's like any vulnerabilities or security issues related to the Docker file itself.
Okay, great. And it was interesting that you mentioned in the package JSON the the production dependencies and the dev dependencies, because people do blur those lines a lot, and they're like, hey, it works, it's fine, accidentally I saved it as a production dependency, and hey, it's fine. And you're right, that's so important, because we don't want to include things that aren't needed.
Yeah. And I think not just not needed, but also like to stay on that for like a second, is a lot of like the vulnerability fatigue that's going on, in the ecosystem is, people do like npm install, they see like, okay, installed, fine. You have like added like 17 million whatever vulnerabilities, and you're like ignoring that because what can I do about them?
Yeah.
And that's like the vulnerability fatigue, I think, which is we kind of like got devs to like accept the security risk because they're like already like overwhelmed with it. So specifically what I'm calling out with the dev dependency thing is, if Jest is a pretty big dependency cost if you add it, okay? The framework, the testing framework, Jest.
Okay.
Nothing bad specifically about it. Just I'm saying there's like a big dependency count. If you use it, if you import it, there's like a whole lot of dependencies getting added. And they might use like things like Lodash or whatever, like that had like prototype pollution and regular expression denial of service and different vulnerabilities. And so the idea is, if it's a dev dependency, like Snyk will by default like not tell you that, like not kind of like float this as a vulnerability, because it understands that this is a dev dependency for you. Of course, you can like reconfigure it otherwise, but it kind of like saves you that mental cost of like going through those kind of like vulnerabilities, because they're like anyway not deployed, which is a whole different level of like working with dependencies. So there's that. And then the other thing that it could look through different things. If you had like Terraforms, Kubernetes YAML files, things like that, like deploying this, in that way, it would find them. It finds code as well. So like that's a different kind of project too. So let's actually go back, and I wanted to see if it, let's go to what it found. So it did find a Docker file. I did find Snyk code supported files. This is SAST, so I'll explain this in a second.
Okay.
Docker file dev, which you have as well, and package.json. So we talked through Docker file dev, and package.json now. Now, Snyk code is what we call in the security ecosystem as a SAST. And you'll see it also for different scorecards. So if we pull one of those up, over here for one of your projects, I think it had a SAST thing. So a SAST is a static application security testing. It basically means it's kind of like static analysis for your types, like using TypeScript to like say, hey, you actually needed to pass, a number and not a string or any or whatever, not even define the type for this, variable. Same thing, but for code. So the idea is, if you scan your code and the SAST tool goes through it to like, something that's a bit smarter than just like a regex to see, hey, you're calling, child process and spinning up, system processes from in an insecure way, for example, sort of like regular expression doing that. The smarter engines do something like, apply sort of like taint engine, which in the security terminology kind of like means I am looking at the call path, trying to see where the request is coming in. So like for example, request body something or request query string. And that flows into some code that you have to like do an SQL query or, read a file system, do a network call, stuff like that. So it understands those things. And if it finds a path which is potentially vulnerable, like in the way that, the way that you use the code, an SQL injection, for example, could happen, it will tell you about those things. That's what a SAST tool is, and that's basically what Snyk code is, and that's what it found here. So I'll go quickly through some of those. I don't know if we'll have the time to like go through all, because I know we're kind of heading towards the end of it, but just to give you an idea of like how this actually works.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for spending so much time with us. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a super busy day today. So, when you feel like you need to stop, we'll call it a day there. But you keep going, and don't forget to take a break before all your other calls and things that you have to do as well. So thank you.
Much appreciated. So if we go through, what was this one actually? Oh, that's the package.json.
This is the package.json, and we can always do a part 2 as well. So don't feel obliged. You have to try and squeeze in everything today. We can always do a part 2 next month for Hacktoberfest or something as well.
Yep, I was counting on that. So I think did it actually find something, because this is kind of empty.
It's because our project's perfect.
It's an amazing project.
No, I know there are some things. So yeah, there will be some.
So no, it's possible things are okay, right? Like if the project is kept up to date and there's like no CVEs for whatever you use, that's fine. And we can see that it actually did detect the dependencies, right? So like 164 dependencies, you can look at them in like a preview if that's like easier to figure out like what's adding what. When there's a vulnerability that's like deep down, like if this was vulnerable, it would kind of like show it here. You could bubble up and see like what parent package added it. So like that's an easier way to like fix it. But since there's like no vulnerabilities known, you could fix in different ways for whatever you already had here. Then we're good. Like there's nothing else that you need to do here. And
I did update it. I think yesterday there were some depender bots came in, and I was like, yeah, merge.
I have a call with Liran tomorrow. Merge it now.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, if this is an open, like a public monitoring of a project, but if we added that through the GitHub integration too, you'd actually get automatic security fixes through pull requests, like you did with Dependabot, but specifically for security issues if you wanted to. So that's an easier one. So if you go to, this was package JSON, I think we talked about Dockerfile. Yeah, so Dockerfile is another way. Now,
I see some red.
Yes, let's talk through it, because this is like bringing us like the DevOpsy part of like this conversation thing. I don't know. I think I'll kind of skip, explaining too much Docker and container. I'll say it in one way. It's like, Docker and containers are like one way to like package your whole project and just send it off to like the cloud or like a person, to just rerun it. And it's kind of like packaged in a specific way. You could think about it if you're like a front-end dev as like, running like a bundler, which, takes all of the assets, whatever, and then creates like one, JavaScript file, HTML file, or like one public this directory, and you push it somewhere and that's get deployed. So similar thing here, except for a backend project, like a server thing, which like backend. We're all backend developers now because server-side rendering is a thing, and you have to like have a server running. So we're all backend developers.
True. It's blurred so much now, like the front and back.
Exactly. And so it's all servers down the rabbit hole here. And the way that you packaged it is there's, I assume, for like maybe not just deploying, but also potentially just like, being able to like, run compose up very quickly and just have like the necessary, like if you need Redis or something to like test this locally, you can have like that already deployed. So it means that it needs an operating system behind the scenes. So this is Node as the Node runtime, with a specific tag, but also you could see that you're bringing in like Node 22 is the I don't know if that's the bigger image, I think, based on Ubuntu. So that brings in a lot of operating system dependencies, like not Node dependencies, but like zlib and Git will be there, and whatever you see Git and then OpenSSH, and like you actually probably don't need them. Like maybe you say, hey, what I'm building here is and like you could say,
I don't need them. I didn't even realize.
Exactly. So why have them? So we can like show you, this is kind of like pretty cool dashboardy thing, because it doesn't just tell you this is vulnerable, but it does a very specific kind of like data-based information to give like a decision that is data-based, to say, this is the current vulnerability count, this is the spread. But if you move to like this image tag, so all you have to do is like open a fixed PR, which probably will not work here because this is like an open source repo that I'm monitoring publicly and didn't add it, but you add it, you can add it and do it. And what it will do is it will change the the Docker image to be this one instead of the other one. And this means you get a slimmer package, right? You get less vulnerability count. And
Big difference. Wow.
Size
five times less vulnerabilities. That's amazing.
Yep. It's okay, by the way, to then just like say, okay, I reviewed the 33, which is a better start than 180, and say, I accept the risk. Like, yeah, this, I'm using, I don't know, AOM, whatever that is. And you could say, ignore it, because I'm not actually using this library. I know it's vulnerable in the, Linux operating system thing that I'm deploying, but like no code at all is like interacting with this in any way. Not know the runtime, not myself, whatever. So that's a better thing. And the other thing I wanted to show you is like pretty cool here is you're using an up-to-date Node runtime. But if you were using a not up-to-date Node runtime, so like say Node 16 or Node 14 or whatever, the node runtime itself could also be vulnerable, and there's like very regular vulnerabilities impacting it. So you could actually filter and say, hey, I actually want to see all the node runtime vulnerabilities in this Docker image, which is pretty cool. So I mean, we know we're not vulnerable to that, so that's great, and we can skip it. And let me take you to the last one, which is code. So here's what we got with code. Close this up a bit, maybe add more space here. So code analysis looks at your code and tries to see, what kind of issues you have. So for example, I see it didn't really find anything in particular, just, two hard-coded secrets, which it also, you could see it's a low severity one. And the reason for that is because it found it as part of your tests. So it kind of want to say, hey, like, I found that you use some hard-coded, string that looks like a credential that you do not want to push in the public repository, but I gave it a low severity because I kind of think it's for test and it's okay to have. But of course, you could either say, yeah, ignore it, I know it is, and that's fine, and then we won't tell you about this anymore. Or you immediately just found you like, it could be in tests, but you could potentially just like copy paste and put something from production here, right? So it doesn't really mean you can ignore it just because it's in a test file.
Yes, no, that's so true. That's just a dummy one from the GitHub docs. So it looks at the right format, but doesn't actually work because it's what we use for mocking out. So it's to pretend we got a fake token back from OAuth when we're mocking out OAuth. But yeah, it doesn't do anything.
Cool. So it looks, it couldn't really find any other obvious issues. Yeah, great job, Eddie, and community.
Yeah, community teamwork. I mean, what I love about open source is I get to work with people way smarter than me, and it doesn't mean they've necessarily got more experience than me. Because when I say to people, "Oh, it's great to work with smart people," they say, "Oh, but you've got more experience than me." Experience is important, but it's not everything. And people who are new to the scene can spot things, and I absolutely love that. So, yeah, I get to work with smarter people who helped me with all this mocking because, I was kind of new to it, I think a couple of years ago, and they got me into it and got me learning. We figured out lots of challenges and making tools work together and so forth. And so, yeah, a big shout out to the Eddie Hub community and the maintainers for pushing these projects forward. And I'm learning so much while doing it.
That's amazing. That's like the real benefit of doing open source. It's just like working with so many cool people.
Exactly. It's just awesome. It's really, really good. This is super interesting. I do need to look into this a lot more because now it's not so bad, but who knows in a week when we add more code changes and all the rest, maybe we miss something. Or like you said, maybe someone in development does change it for a real token because they think it's okay and commits it up because like you said, it's not an ignored file. So it's not like the end file where it's ignored. They commit it up and someone misses it and it goes in. So yeah, I think it's in... I think it's important, or maybe to put a note, like a comment saying, "Do not put your token here," or even abbreviate that token. Maybe I don't know, but someone will still paste it in. So maybe just wrap it. Do not change ever. So yeah,
I will. No, 100%. I will actually chime in on that and say, where is that? Let me say, but the Snyk code thing that we just saw, whether that's code, by the way, or SQL injection, whatever, that actually has a VS Code plugin, which I'm kind of like looking for an image here, but I'm not finding that super fast. But it kind of like looks obviously like that when you have it running in the IDE. And so I kind of like, I dubbed it. I don't know if the marketing team agrees with me, but like I dubbed it as like scan on save, which is pretty cool. So you don't have to wait to like any CI or whatever. It like literally takes seconds. The moment you do like Command S on whatever file you're working on, it will actually scan it and give you, hard-coded secrets or, SQL injection or cross-site scripting or whatever right in the IDE. So you don't have to like even wait till it's on the CI, because that moment when it's there already, it's too late. Kind of too late. Yeah, especially
it
for
is,
secrets.
Right? Yes, exactly. It is too late. So that's brilliant. And that's in the like VS Code like plugin store, the normal thing in VS Code. I think it's called plugins, but yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, here's how it works. It's VS Code, IntelliJ, whatever you use. It's like probably a plugin for every one of them. So
okay, I want to make a note because I will forget. We'll make a note right now, right now, so I don't forget. Snyk. I spelled it wrong. I spelled Skynet by mistake. Okay, Snyk, I've got it open. I will have a look later on. It auto completed. I kind of typed it wrong. I went to Skynet and I was like, right, no, oh my God, AI is coming.
What are you building there, Eddie?
So yes, I see it now. 220,000 downloads. Wow. Okay, so I want to look at that after this live stream. So that is great. Yeah, anything we can do in an IDE, like you said, do it before is so much better. We
Exactly.
also using Husky for trunk as well to do the linters before
I love
we
it too. Yeah.
commit. So if I can do this in the VS Code as well, that will be amazing. So absolutely love that.
Nice. All right, so I'll close up with share with you all the links afterwards, but I'll close up with this one. I think Arundel kind of like mentioned one of my other best practices around Docker containers. So if you're like building containers with for Node with Docker, I have like a really good one on the Snyk website. You could just like Google it and you'll probably find it. But it has like really up-to-date practices. This one I kind of need to update. I know it's like from a while ago, but except for like this PDF thing that you wanted to like download and print or whatever, just put it on your wall like we all do.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I wrote this with Juan, who's like the maintainer of Redaccio, which is like an open source NPM proxy thing, which is like a really cool project. And we kind of put together this like, a lot of the stuff we talked about here is already there, right? Like avoid publishing secrets, log file, which I haven't talked through, but like, a bunch of projects have added that. And it's like really important security risk that you should probably avoid. It's a Husky linter thing as well.
Okay.
2FA. So there's like a bunch of things that added here. That's like a really good start again. So like I didn't want to like flood you with, there's like a ton of information we talked through, but if you wanted something super concise and also very on point with like NPM and JavaScript projects, if that's your thing, go here. This is like a really good start. And if you have any questions on any of them, just like ping me on like on social or whatever, and just like ask me DM, whatever, anything. I'm happy to like jump in and help you out.
I love that. I found the blog. Here it is. I'm sharing it in the chat, and I've shared Liran's Twitter as well. Don't DM Liran. You know how I all feel. I hate DMs. Ask in public, because then if you ask the question in public, it allows Liran to scale more, but also we could all benefit from the conversation.
Thank you for saying
that.
Please
ask questions, but please ask in public. That's all I ask. So yes, here's Liran. Tag me. I'd love to see your questions. It's super important. And here's the blog post. I have shared it in the chat as well. Liran, thank you so much for today. My mind is like, there's like so much taken. I've made lots of notes. I know where my rest of my week's gone. I'm gonna be looking into that. If I have any questions, I will let you know publicly, of course. And thank you so much again. And we would love a part 2, next month or the month after when you get time. So I know you're super busy. I'm really looking forward to it. It's so interesting. And hopefully by then would have improved the project and added some more features to the report from a security perspective.
Nice.
So that could be a bit more interesting to you as well. We did things like, because you mentioned the URL, you mentioned the description checks, but one thing that you probably don't see on that specific report is some people put the URL in the description and we just find that's duplicate. So we're starting to do a few checks like that to say, well, the same URL is in the description as the URL, which is just it's not required. Exactly. But we would love, like, security checks is something that we don't do. So I can't wait to add the open source scorecard to that. OpenSSF, I think it is. So yes. So I can't wait to add that. It's going to be awesome. Liran, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to close the live stream and I'm just going to say thank you to you personally afterwards, if you can hang on for one more minute. Is there any other closing notes that you would like to say? I think you've covered loads of the security stuff. Have you got any events coming up or anything you want to share?
We have like the DevSecCon 2024 event coming up. It's like a lot of security stuff. There's a developer security track as well around like around like security education and culture, which is like I would recommend hitting as a developer. It's like kind of insightful.
Absolutely. When is that and where is it?
It's, if you go to like the Snyk website, it's kind of like pops up here. So easy to find, easy to register. I would highly recommend do that. And
perfect. I'm going to share the link in the chat. It says register for free today. Is this in person or live?
That's an live. That's a live thing, a virtual event.
Perfect. Developing AI trust. October 8th and 9th. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say thank you so much. You've been amazing, and thank you so much for having me and giving us the opportunity to also like talk about security, because that's like I feel like an important aspect of thing, especially around AI and like code assistants like starting to complete a lot of code for you. Yeah, I mean it's been a blast. I've enjoyed it, Eddie. You should do it more.
Thank you so much. We should definitely do it again. And I'm just going to bring this up. Register for this event. It's something that I'm going to register for now as well. 8th and 9th October during Hacktoberfest. So that's the month we're going to be geeking out, collaborating on
Yes.
open source. And AI plays a big part in our coding lives. And so does security. So Liran, thank you so much. People are saying thank you in the chat. Sudhansu, hopefully I pronounced that right. Thank you for being here and supporting.
Thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate it. And we'll see you all on Twitter and Eddie Hub Discord. Liran and everyone, thank you so much. Have a great day.